So a lot of what Josh talked about in terms of resources and things are things that I like to cover in my demo as well. I might cover some of that stuff too, just so that I can make sure, just because it is really fundamental to, the way that we think about configuration management and the way that, Puppet works in general. So if it seems like I'm being a little repetitive in the beginning, just hang in there. It'll all get new and different quickly. So let's see, let's make all this stuff bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just talking about the basics of the Puppet language itself. Then we'll go into creating a manifest and what that kind of looks like. And then I'll spend most of the second half or 3/4 looking at the Puppet Enterprise console itself and kind of going through some of the new features in 3.7 and things like that. So if you have questions as I'm going through, feel free to shoot your hand up and ask me, or I'll leave time at the end for questions also. So especially if you're new to Puppet, I think one distinction I want to make is Puppet itself is just the language. It's the language that we use to describe the state we want our servers to be in. And then, Puppet Enterprise, or the Puppet tool itself, is a combination of, all of these different products and tools combined together to give you a complete solution that allows, your agents to connect and talk to the master, allows the agents to tell the master who they are, allows the master to communicate back to the agents, things like that. So, when we talk about Puppet itself, it's oftentimes just referring to the language. And the Puppet language gives you kind of a normalized way to be able to talk about and talk to each of your nodes, regardless of the operating system you're working on. So, Josh just showed you some modules or manifests describing different states that your Windows servers should be in, but a lot of that same language you can use on your Linux servers, you can use on like an AIX machine to get back the configuration that exists on those machines, and then also tell those machines which configuration state they should be in. So let's just wake everybody up by starting on the command line. Always works. Okay, so I'm gonna, again, like I said, I'm gonna touch on this resources thing just a little bit, even though Josh already did, just because I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So when we talk about resources in Puppet, it's kind of like an object. So resources themselves can be a user, a file, a package, a service, and Puppet is smart enough on all of our supported operating systems to be able to know where to go on each operating system to both get information about those resource types and to be able to define the state that those resource types should be in. So, here I am on the command line. It's so humongous. It's crazy. Okay. So, here I am. I'm on a CentOS server that has a Puppet agent installed. And if I just want to get a sense of all of the users that exist on this particular agent, I can just type in Puppet resource user, and it's going to interrogate my system and show me all of the users that exist on this server in Puppet code. So it's showing me, the name of the user and then this list of attributes that describe the state that user is in on this server. Now, just because these users are showing up here doesn't mean necessarily that Puppet is managing those users. Is that off to the side? Doesn't mean that Puppet's necessarily managing any of these users. So it's just saying it knows where to go, inspect, and see, okay, which users are defined on the system, and then it's going to come back and show me, who those users are and how they're currently configured. So it's kind of nice though, because it's showing you and giving you a little bit of a blueprint as to how you can describe, if you wanted to change any attributes of these users, we're showing you some of the user resource attributes that already exist, so that it can kind of give you an idea of, if you wanted to Puppetize these, which attributes you could change. I could also do the same thing with services. I can say Puppet resource service. And again, it'll go out, interrogate the system, and show me all of the services that are currently on the system and whether they're running or stopped and whether they're enabled to be restarted at boot time. But similarly, I can also do this on a Windows server. So here I am on a Windows Server 2008 box. Again, I have a Puppet agent installed. I can just ask, okay, Puppet resource user. Here it's going to show me all of the Windows users that exist on this box, and the attributes aren't all the same because things like shell and things like that don't mean anything within Windows. But the point here is that I'm using the same language to describe or to go out and get the configuration of these users on across all of my different operating system types. And if we go back over, just want to take a look here. If I go here and I type in type reference, the type reference is a great way to be able to see all of the resource types that exist. So all of these resource types that Puppet can go out and in the background figure out where to get that configuration that exist right when you install Puppet. So all of these resource types already exist, and you can use them to describe the state of each of these resources. Some of them, like cron jobs or scheduled tasks in Windows, but these are the ones that come just out of the box. Now, one of the things that makes Puppet so awesome is all of you guys. Our community publishes a ton of modules to the Forge, and a lot of those modules build these resource type extensions. So they build new resource types that you can use to describe the state you want your servers to be in. So if we go over to the Puppet Forge, some of the modules are pretty OS specific, like the registry key module that Josh was just talking about. Let's take a look at that. How many of you are Windows admins? Fair number. So this registry key module creates a custom type that allows you to describe the state that you want your registry keys to be in, sort of in that resource format. So instead of going into the registry itself, you can just say, okay, here's the resource type, it's the registry resource type and value, and then input the settings that you want to have for each of those attributes. So a lot of the extensions or a lot of the modules we have on the Forge kind of relate back to either creating new resource types or new classes that you can use within your environment. And a lot of people, especially if you're a developer, kind of think of these as kind of like libraries. So you can download these and kind of funnel your own parameters into each of these modules to kind of specify them to what your internal needs are and customize them for your environment. Now I know we've talked a little bit about the different designations that exist on the Forge, but it's been changing pretty rapidly, so I want to make sure that we kind of cover each of the different kind of categories of module that exist out there. So we have the Puppet supported modules. It's a program that we came up with just this past year. These are written by Puppet Labs employees. They are tested in-house. They're part of our QA process. And if you're a Puppet Enterprise customer and you have any issues using these or any questions, you can write in and get support on these modules. We have Puppet approved modules, which are written by people in our community that our modules team has gone out, taken a look, seeing, these are kind of best practices. We would recommend that you use these. There's so many modules on the Forge now, over 3,000. And just kind of to give you some guidance in terms of where do I get started, what's a good framework or baseline for me to start with looking at these modules so you're not just overwhelmed by the number that are out there. And then just recently, within the last month or so, I think, we've added some Puppet Enterprise only modules. So the Microsoft SQL Server module is only available to Puppet Enterprise customers, allows you to install Microsoft SQL Server, manage your databases, manage database users, things like that. And then the new F5 module as well. So we're definitely extending out into the network device space and trying to get to the point where you can kind of automate your network devices similar to the way that you're automating your servers using Puppet and eventually having an agent on a lot of those different network devices. Okay, I think that's all I need to talk about in the sort of housekeeping, general, what's out there mode. So here I am, I'm back on my CentOS module, or my CentOS agent, and let's say that I wanted to look at the root user on this module. So I can say Puppet resource user root, and here it's showing me the current configuration of the root user on this system. I can see all the different attributes that are available to kind of change around. So if I wanted to manage this with Puppet, I can just output this into a file. I'm going to call it root.pp. And anything with that .pp file extension is what we call a Puppet manifest. So Puppet manifest is just a file that contains Puppet code. So now if I go into this file, I can see, again, all of the current configurations of the root user, but maybe I want to change a couple of these. So I'm going to change the comment to be managed by Puppet. And then I'm going to change, the shell to be just bin.sh instead of bin.bash. And then any other attributes in here that I don't care about, maybe I don't care about the password min or max age. I don't care about the GID for this user. Any of the attributes that I take out of here, Puppet is just not going to manage those for me. So if those change, I've told Puppet, hey, don't worry about it. You're not responsible for managing those. So now I'm going to go ahead and save this file out. So now the state that I've described within my manifest is different than the state that exists on the system. So what I'm going to tell Puppet to do is, okay, go ahead and apply this manifest, but I don't want Puppet to go ahead and make the change right away. Maybe I want to make sure that my manifest is going to do exactly what I think it's going to do. I don't want to just go out and say, go change this. I want to make sure it's doing what I want. So I can add on what we call this simulation or no-op or no-operation flag onto this run, and it's just going to tell me what Puppet would do to get me to that end state I described within my manifest. So now it's gone ahead, it's letting me know that it noticed that the comment is different. It says that the value is root, but that it should be managed by Puppet. And then similarly that the shell value is currently bin.bash, but that it should be bin.sh, which is what I described in my manifest. But it's telling me it hasn't actually gone ahead and made those changes yet. So this is a huge feature of Puppet, being able to have Puppet let you know when there is a discrepancy between your desired end state and the current state on your system. A lot of our customers, especially the bigger customers, will run exclusively in this no-op or simulation mode, go through, kind of review the changes that Puppet would make on their systems, and then be able to go to like a change review board and say, okay, here's the changes that have to happen on these systems, go through and approve each one, and then you know what's going to be happening on your system instead of just having Puppet auto-remediate, but you're still keeping an eye on how often your machines are drifting and exactly what attributes on those machines are drifting. All right, so now that I've seen, okay, Puppet's going to do what I thought, I can go ahead and remove that no-op flag, and I'm just going to tell Puppet to go ahead and run in what we call enforcement mode and make those changes on the system. So now I can see, if I type in Puppet resource user root again, I can see that now the comment has been changed to managed by Puppet, and the shell value has been changed to bin.sh for this particular user. So that's I mean, the simplest example I can possibly show you, and it's good for illustrating, how Puppet works, but, most manifests don't look like that. It's a pretty simple example. So let's look at a slightly more complicated example. And so within this manifest, I can see that we have 3 different resource types described here. Instead of a file resource type, we have a package, or excuse me, instead of a user resource type, we have a package, a file, and a service resource type. And together, these resource declarations are kind of managing an overall business service. So it's making sure that, when I bring a new Red Hat server online, I want to make sure that people can shell into that server. So here I'm saying, okay, Puppet, make sure that the OpenSSH server package is installed. Then go ahead and manage the configuration file. Here we're saying, here's the owner and group and mode of this file. And in this case, we're actually pointing to, sort of a flat text file, like a blessed copy of this configuration file, but this doesn't have to be an actual hard-coded file somewhere. You can use templates to dynamically discover, okay, which server am I on, auto-populate these different configuration attributes based on the server that you're running on, or if there's just a couple of attributes within that configuration file that you want to manage, you can do that too. You don't have to kind of go after the whole file every time the Puppet agent runs, just an example. And then finally, we're saying, okay, go ahead, ensure the SSHD service is running, make sure that it's enabled at boot time, and then the subscribe meta parameter is saying, keep an eye on that SSHD configuration file, and if the Puppet agent, or excuse me, if the Puppet master sends down a new version of that file, go ahead and refresh this service so that it picks up on those changes right away. So you're not waiting and forgetting to refresh the service and it's not picking up on those changes. So together, these are managing and kind of ensuring that an end user somewhere will be able to shell into this particular server. And we're wrapping these resource declarations into what we call a Puppet class. So here we're calling it OpenSSH Red Hat, but these classes are what you're going to assign to your nodes or your Puppet agents to make sure that they receive this configuration. So, you saw me run that manifest kind of locally on that CentOS server, but if I wanted to apply that root user configuration to all of my servers, I could just wrap that into a class and then classify any servers that need to receive that root user configuration with that particular class, and then when the agent runs, it would go to the master, and the master would send down a catalog describing the state it needed that resource to be in. Any questions? You still with me? Okay, I'm going to switch over to a bright, beautiful GUI now, so hopefully it'll be less dark in here. Okay, so depending on how familiar you guys are with kind of the older versions of Puppet Enterprise, there's a lot of changes that have happened in the console in this latest release. So this is 3.7. 3.7.1 is the latest release of Puppet Enterprise. And here on the first page, I can see a list of all of the agents that I'm currently managing with Puppet. So I have a small Vagrant environment on my laptop, and this is showing me a list of all of the servers that are currently connecting in and talking to my Puppet master. I can see that I have CentOS servers, a couple of Ubuntu boxes, as well as Windows servers, all tied into the single instance of a Puppet master. These check marks over here and this graph at the top, the colors are representing what happened when the Puppet agent ran on each of these systems. So any green anywhere throughout the console is letting me know that Puppet ran, it compared the desired state to the current configuration on that system and said, hey, I don't need to do anything. All the services you said should be running are running. All of the users are configured the way I need them to be. Everything was fine. Puppet didn't need to do anything. Any of these blue check marks or blue that I see kind of in this history bar showing up at the top are letting me know that Puppet did something on that system to get it to the end state that I described within my Puppet code. So, maybe you've change the password of a particular user or change the contents of a particular file. Anytime Puppet does something on your system, rather than just checking in and noticing that everything is already in a good state, is going to show up here in blue, so giving you sort of a visual indicator that Puppet made a change on your system. You'll see any sort of failures are showing up in red. So I think there was a question earlier talking about, if I have an application deployment that fails, how do I know or how do I see that within Puppet? You would see a red failure showing up here within the console, and then a report kind of describing what happened during the run, sort of which resources Puppet was not able to enforce during that run, and which ones we kind of checked in on and already looked good. So now I'm going to move over into classification. So this is the newest. If I type and talk at the same time, I'll have to do it 4 times. This is some of the new functionality that came out within 3.7. So this new node manager or way to classify your nodes within the console is much more dynamic. Oh, before I do this, sorry, forget that. One other thing I want to show you is the factor facts that we're collecting from the agent every time it runs. So you may have heard a couple of people today talking about facts and the factor tool. So as I mentioned, Puppet Enterprise is kind of this comprehensive tool that has a lot of other open source tools and projects kind of bundled in together with it. Factor is one of those tools. So every time the Puppet agent runs, Factor collects these facts about each of these machines and sends them back to the master. And the values of these facts are updated every time the agent runs, so we're always up to date in terms of, some of the Factor facts are, the FQDN, things that are pretty static, but also, how much memory is available on this machine, or you can create your own custom facts to say, maybe you have a custom application that you've written and you want to keep an eye on what version that application is at all times. So you can write a custom factor fact to kind of output that and include that in this inventory information here for that node every time the agent runs on that system. Make sense? Cool. Okay, so now you're going to see why I had to go back and show you that. So, new node classifier, instead of having to go through and kind of manually select the servers that you want to be a part of a particular group or receive a particular piece of Puppet code, now you can auto-discover attributes of those machines or the certain fact values of your agents and decide which of these different node groups those agents should belong to. So you can see, already we have a couple of different node groups here. We have Linux servers, Windows servers, but I'm going to create a new node group, and I'm going to call it Jenkins servers. I'm going to create the group. And now I'm going to go in here, and this is where I'm describing the attributes for the nodes that should belong and be automatically added into this particular node group. So I'm going to start by saying, I only want only those servers that fall under the OS family Red Hat should be added dynamically into this group. And as you can see, as I was typing that, at first it came up and said, 5 of the 11 agents that you have tied into the system match this factor fact value. So I'm going to add that rule. But I want to add a couple more rules. I don't just want all of my OS family Red Hat servers to be added into this group. Maybe I want to make sure that it's only those that are on the operating system release 6.5. Oops. And then I can see that's narrowing that down to 3 of my nodes. And then maybe I want to say, and then only those that live in the Portland data center, which also gives me 3 nodes. So this is just letting me know how many of my nodes kind of match each one of these individual rules. I'm going to commit all 3 of these changes. And then if I go to this matching nodes tab right here, then I can see which of my nodes actually satisfied all 3 of those rules. So this way, you don't have to worry about user error in terms of someone adding a node into a group that didn't belong there. You're programmatically deciding which nodes should belong to which groups using the new node classifier definitions. And now I can go ahead and add my classes. So like I said, I want these to be Jenkins servers. So I'm going to go ahead and add my Jenkins class here. And then I'm going to add another class called repos, which will make the run happen a little bit more quickly if I tweak one of my parameters. I'll talk more about this in a minute. So I'm going to add this parameter, then I'm going to say, go ahead and commit these 3 changes. And now I've, so at this point, all I've done is I've told the Puppet master, hey, that CentOS node, I want it to become a Jenkins server, but the CentOS node doesn't know about that yet. We have to make the Puppet agent run on that node and have it check in with the master before it's aware of this new configuration that it should be taking on. So I have a couple options. I can kind of wait the standard 30-minute interval for that agent to check back in. I could go out to the command line and shell into that server and just kick off the Puppet agent run from the command line. Or I can use live management to kick it off from the console itself. So live management is it's sort of a front end for another one of those projects that's bundled with Puppet Enterprise. It's a tool called mCollective, and basically it's a message bus. So it lets you send signals out over the bus to say, kick off a Puppet run on this particular server, or restart a service on these 6 servers, or something like that. So if I select Control Puppet up here, and then I highlight the node over on the left-hand side that I want to have the Puppet agent run, I can just say run once. And now I've told Puppet to go ahead and kick off on this particular server. So now I'm not waiting for it to just wake up. I've told it, go ahead and kick off an ad hoc run on this server. Maybe I need that build server to come up right away, so I don't want to wait for that 30-minute interval to come around. So that's just going to take a minute to run. While that's running, let's switch over and take a look at some other things you can do within live management. So here on this advanced tasks button, you have a summary of a couple different things you can do. One of them is if I go to click on service here I can say, I want to restart a service, type in the service name, and then just highlight whichever node that I want that service to be restarted on the left-hand side over here. A lot of people will do this or kind of utilize this if they have maybe mixed operating systems. So maybe you have someone that isn't quite as familiar with one operating system over another. They're the only one that's there at 3 in the morning, and you don't want to have to go in or open up your laptop. Instead, you can just tell them, hey, just go in, type in this name of the service, and click click run so that it restarts or starts that service on a particular server, for example. Let's see, there's a couple other things I want to show you in here, but I think I'm going to wait till the end just for suspense purposes. All right, so I'm flipping back over to the nodes here, and I can see that I now have a blue check mark showing up next to my CentOS server, and that's telling me that Puppet made a change on this server. So let's go ahead and take a look at the report of what happened during that Puppet agent run. So I can select this timestamp right here. And this is going to break down, there's kind of 3 different views we can look at. The first one is breaking down the number of resources, so users, files, packages, services, the number of resources that it managed during that run, which ones fell into which different categories, so how many changed, if there were any failures, how many failed. But down here at the bottom, this is helpful too, and I've realized that a lot of people haven't rolled through this list. But this is interesting. If you have a Puppet agent run that's taking a long time, come and look at this and see which resource type or which category the majority of that run is taking up. It'll kind of give you some insights into what's slowing down your Puppet runs and things like that. The log view, this is just going to show me exactly what I would have seen on the command line if I had kicked this off through the command line. So if you're used to looking at things this way, you can do that. But I think the most valuable or the easiest to look at view is this events view. So this is breaking down by individual resource what happened during this run. Can you guys see that? I know it's, yeah, totally. Sorry, I keep forgetting how huge that is. It's really small on my laptop. So here I can see, okay, we kicked off a couple exec statements. You heard Josh talk about exec resources and kicking off exec statements. We managed a couple of files here, managed some firewall rules, installed a couple of packages. I can click on some of these and see more specifically what Puppet did during that run. But we're also seeing where within my Puppet code I've asked Puppet to make this change. So this path right here is pointing to the individual manifest as well as the line number within that manifest that's kind of calling out that change. So this is really nice for debugging purposes if you have things that you've noticed are changing or that you need to update. Instead of kind of poring over your code, it's pointing to the actual manifest that where you've specified that resource should be managed. And then down here, I can also see, we have 100 different resource types that Puppet checked in on, but noticed we're already in the state that it needed to be in, so it didn't go ahead and make any changes. So just kind of letting you know that it's checked in on those, but nothing needed to happen. So now that I've kind of kicked that off, I can see that we've deployed these packages. Now I can go up here and navigate. I should have showed this to you before so you knew I didn't stage it, but just believe me. Now I can see that we've deployed the Jenkins application running on top of Tomcat, but just to prove that I didn't stage this whole thing, I'm going to change the version number. So here in the bottom right, it says 1572. See? There you go. All right, so we're on Jenkins version 1572, and maybe I need to switch back a version. Maybe this is a QA machine, and I want to run a test on an earlier version of Jenkins. As long as I've written what's called a parameterized class, so a class that allows me to pass parameters into it, I can use the console to change the value of the version for that Jenkins application. So now I'm going to go in here, I'm going to go to classes, and I'm going to choose the version parameter, and instead of saying just, always set this to latest, always have the latest version of Jenkins running on this server, I can change this to say I want version 1.449 to run. I'm going to add that parameter, commit the change. So now, if I go over and refresh this, should it change? Should I be ready for 1.449? Yeah, I haven't run the agent yet, so it was a test. I'm gonna go run the agent again in live management. So again, I've told the master the state that I want that server to be in, but the server itself doesn't know about it until the agent runs and checks in with the master. So now I'm gonna go out and tell it, okay, go ahead, kick off this run. Actually, let's do it from the command line, just for fun. Let's just mix it up here. So now I'm just going to run puppet agent -t. So this is a different command than the puppet apply that I ran earlier. This is actually telling the agent to connect back in with the master and have the master compile the catalog describing the resource states that I want each of my resources to be in, instead of compiling the catalog locally, which is what happens when you run a puppet apply. So now I'm going to go ahead, run puppet agent -t. It's letting me know here, it's telling me it's loading facts, it's loading those factor facts, retrieving the catalog from the master, making a couple of changes, refreshing that Tomcat service. And then once that service is refreshed, the run will be done, and then that server will be on version 1449. Any questions so far?
What did you say the -T option was for?
It's shorthand for --test. It basically, I think it adds in it makes the run more verbose. Hunter, you would have a better answer for that.
Background.
It doesn't run it in the background. Thank you. Has it run? Yeah. There's a couple of different attributes that are bundled in there. Yeah, it means there's a human sitting at the keyboard, he says. All right, so now if we go back, refresh. Now I can see that I'm running Jenkins version 1.449. Yeah, thanks guys. Thank you. I needed that. Okay, so in that case, we were very deliberate in what we were doing. We knew exactly which servers we wanted to manage. We knew which server we wanted to create as a Jenkins server. And so, kind of adding on to that, that means we knew exactly which report we needed to look at, but that's not always the case, right? If you have 100 or 500 servers tied in here, going and clicking on the individual report that had the information you wanted to look at isn't always the most realistic option. So we have what we've called the event inspector that shows you the same information that you get out of those reports, just in a little bit of a different format. So here what we're doing is we're saying, show me any events. So that last tab in the report we looked at is called the events tab. And it's breaking down, all the resources that you're managing and things like that. This is only pulling out the events. It's leaving out all of those unchanged events. So all of those resources that Puppet checked in with and already were in the state we needed it to be in, that stuff's not going to show up here. Here we're only going to show you, only those resources that we tried to enforce, the resource states we tried to enforce that failed, or the resource states that we tried to enforce that had changes. And we're breaking this down into kind of 3 different categories. You can either look at this in terms of the classes that describe the state those resources should be in, the nodes, so maybe you just want to get a sense of which nodes in my environment have had any sort of changes or failures or no operation runs recently in the last 30 minutes or 24 hours or something. Here it's saying, okay, I've only had the CentOS node have a change recently. Or the individual resource type. So here, I can see all the individual resource types that had changes in the last 30 minutes. So kind of starting at the top level, let's say I want to look at, the Tomcat class. I can click on that class and it drills in, and here it's telling me, okay, well, this Tomcat class has changes on this CentOS server. Can drill in a little bit further, and then it details the resources within those classes, within that particular class that had changes. Drilling one further, now I'm saying, okay, show me, what happened to the Tomcat package. Here it's telling me, it changed it from absent to present, and again, giving you the information saying, this is where you told Puppet to do that, and here's the line number and all that. So same information, just in a little bit of a different format in case you don't know exactly the run you need to look at. Okay, 2 other quick things I want to talk about in the console. Access control, so role-based access controller, RBAC, is something that we've been working towards for a long time, and this is a new feature within 3.7 where you can say, this integrates with LDAP and Active Directory and things like that, so you can say, I only want these people to be able to classify this subset of nodes. So I have a couple different users defined within the console here. I just created some local users. And let's say I'm going to create a Linux admin's user role and say the description is Linux system administrators. I'm going to add the role, and now if I dig in here, I can choose which users I want to add into this role. So I'm going to add myself in. And say add user, it's telling me that I need to commit this change. But so far I haven't actually told Puppet anything about what I want this user role to include. So I have to go over to the permissions stage here and say, I want to restrict the node groups that the Linux admins have access to, and I can kind of get a little bit more granular about what that looks like too. I can either have them just have view permissions, or say, I want them to be able to create, edit, and delete child groups, basically saying, add new classification to these servers, so apply new Puppet code to these servers. And then choose the node group that I want this to apply to. So I'm going to say, I want them to be able to create, edit, and delete child groups of the Linux server's node group. So I'm going to add permission, and then maybe, just to really hammer the point home, I only want them to be able to view those servers that fall under the Windows server's node group. So this is a way that you can give people access to the console without worrying, they're only responsible for this subset of my nodes or my servers. I don't want them accidentally, classifying a production server with something that should be tested first or something like that. Just kind of allowing you to section off who has access to do what within the console. Cool. Okay. So finally, I want to switch back over to live management, and I think somebody might have touched on this already, but in case they didn't, here's where this browse resources portion is where you can compare the state of a resource across, kind of as many nodes as you select over in the left-hand side here. So I'm just going to select a couple. Sure, why not? Select those three and then say, maybe I want to check and see what the state of the root user is across all three of these nodes, and then it's going to highlight up here at the top any differences or any differentiation between the way that root user is managed across those three nodes. So here it's saying that on my CentOS 6.5 node, the comment and the shell attributes are different than they are on these other two, obviously because we changed those earlier in the demo. But this can be hugely helpful if you have, someone that gets added into the company or leaves the company. You want to make sure they don't have access to certain servers anymore. I think someone talked about this earlier in terms of packages, but this was a huge help to our customers during the Heartbleed bug, when they could just go in and say, show me the version of OpenSSL that I have running, especially when they needed to kind of prove out to management, like, yes, we've kind of done our due diligence and all of our servers are up to date. Here I can show you, we're going to go out in real time and take a look at the version that's running on each of these servers. So I only have about 8 minutes left. Do you guys have questions? If you don't, I can definitely keep talking.
Can you, from that report, can you remediate that server that's out of config?
You would need to go in and change the manifest itself, or classify that node with something that described the state that you want that server to be in. But that could tell you, if these two have their root user being managed by Puppet, and or in this case vice versa, that class hasn't been added, these two servers haven't been added into that node group, and you would need to add them into the node group. Yeah.
If I have Windows node and it's using reboot and it causes it to reboot and complete the run, what would it show up on that thing? Would it show up as changed and just Windows was not complete?
Yeah, so the question was if you had specified for Windows reboot to happen and it goes ahead and reboots, does that show up as a change? I believe it does, because reboot is a resource type, and if you're constantly looking to see, only enable this if, this file exists. I'd have to double check on that. Is Josh in here? Do you know, Hunter?
the other part is you wouldn't know that your run's not complete because it stops the run depending on how you apply it. Is there anything that shows up in the console let you know that you're in a drift?
I love that it picks back up after the reboot.
It does. So yeah, the question was, you know, when you enable a reboot from a Windows machine and it's in the process of rebooting, the run hasn't finished yet. So, you know, his question was, how do you know that you're still kind of in a configuration drifted state because that run hasn't finished? It's kind of like the time between when I kicked off the Puppet Agent run and when the report came in. I'm waiting to see that report to make sure that everything went into the right state. So while you're waiting for those changes, it's kind of falling under the category of waiting for those changes to take on. So as soon as the reboot comes back, as soon as the system comes back online, it'll continue with that run. And then once the run finishes, you'll get a report telling you everything that happened.
You can use Control Help to see the status of that.
Right, yeah. So you could also go in and say, I want to find out the status of Puppet on, you know, this server. And it'll tell you it's either running or the agent has stopped, and then if, you know, the agent's not running and you're looking for a report that doesn't exist, then there's, you know, then something might have happened. Yep.
So you show being able to compare different nodes here, but in the situation where you were deploying Puppet for the first time and set up your Puppet Master and Enterprise Console and whatnot, but you already have existing Unix server deployments. Can you speak towards how you would bring those servers into configuration management and be able to compare them if they're already existing?
So I think the question was, if you're just kind of getting started and you want to compare the states of those servers, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, new Puppet deployment, old servers.
Right. Okay. So once the agent lives on any one of your nodes, whether you just spun it up or whether it's been running for months and months, all of these resources, all of those core resource types, Puppet already knows all that information because it's basically just running Puppet resource user or Puppet resource package. So by having the agent installed on there already, you're already starting off with a baseline of being able to compare how they're configured. And a lot of our, the first step in a lot of POCs is, you know, I expect this particular resource to be the same across these 12 nodes. Let's, you know, put an agent on them, connect them to the master, and you can go to Live Management and immediately, as soon as the agent is installed, compare those. So you don't have to have any Puppet code applied to your system to use that feature. Does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
So what are the limitations of that? How many of the various services or packages that are installed in a given system is it able to characterize in that way? Like it wouldn't know about a custom application or something, right? So it wouldn't be able to generate a manifest file for something to know anything about.
Right. I mean, so it depends. It depends on, you know, if it's a custom package or something that you're kind of pulling down using, you know, like a staging module and pulling a file down to install the package. That might not fall into a kind of a default resource type. And that's where you would go ahead and use those factor facts. You can really easily write a custom factor fact to say, I want to check in on the version of this custom application, and every time the Puppet agent runs, that's going to show up there. And then you can actually write a manifest or a module around checking on the value of that custom fact to make sure that the value of the custom fact equals what you want it to be. Did I repeat that question? You guys, I didn't repeat the question?
Yeah, you did.
I did?
Yeah, you did.
Cool. I have 2 minutes.
With the new node classification in 3.7, we have a ton of stuff in 3.3 now. Is there any easy migration path there?
Well, no, don't. My face is the worst. But,
Repeat the question.
sorry, the question was, they have a lot of configuration already defined within 3.3 already. Is there a clean upgrade path to kind of migrate all of that stuff into 3.7? Are you talking about like node groups and things that already exist? Candidly, right now, we don't. We had a bunch of developers in town last week, and I sat down and worked on that problem specifically. Lindsay, do you want to talk about that? Okay, cool. Lindsay's going to talk about that for a minute. Oh, sorry. No, that's what I mumbled into my hand, is if you wanted to talk about it. You don't have to. Definitely check with support before you do that, I would say.
I would
did?
reach out to your local technical solutions engineer, which I believe is Elizabeth.
Thanks, Lindsay.
That was a terrible answer. No, she's right. That's kind of a gap. And Elizabeth's whole collective part of the team spent a lot of time working on that. And you know, hopefully we have some ways we can kind of get you out of that. We can kind of migrate it.
Yeah, I think that the answer right now is make sure you know what nodes belonged in which groups, and we're working on an easy way to be able to export that information from 3.3, import it into 3.7 so that you have 3.7 groups that map to the groups you had within 3.3.
Thank you so much. Oh, it's dead.
She said thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.